We are 25 days away from the start of the 2023 Duke football season. On today's show, my good buddy Josh Cox is here with us. We're going to rank all 12 games on that Duke football schedule. Let's have some fun here today on Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson, and it's so great to have you here with us on this Thursday, August 10th, 2023. On today's show, we're going to be talking about Duke football. We are 25 days away from kickoff, and I want to go through all 12 games on the Duke schedule. Let's talk about them. What is the hardest game for the Blue Devils? What is the easiest? 1 to 12, we're ranking them on today's show with my good pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. Follow me on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. Also be sure to go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support means the absolute world to us here at Locked On Blue Devils. Leave us a 5-star rating, podcast written review, whether it be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those great platforms. Again, your support means everything. So without further ado, let's bring on my good pal, Josh Cox from the aforementioned Section 17 podcast. Josh, it's good to see you, man.
Now, man, looking for that means football season's getting close, right?
Like 25 days, man. 25 days away. It really is going to sneak up and be here before we know it.
Yeah, definitely, man. It's gonna be good. Good time to be a Duke football fan for sure.
So let's get into it today. What I want to do today is we take a look at the schedule. We've got 12 games, and we're going to present the folks the Locked On, the Josh Cox edition of the easiest schedule, or the easiest games on the schedule, all the way to the hardest. So we're going to go in reverse order. What's easy for the Blue Devils? What is the most difficult? And if you're watching us on YouTube, you're going to have the benefit of seeing the schedule constantly scrolling with us across the bottom of the screen there. But you'll tell us, Josh, easiest to most difficult, with thoughts from me as we go through. So I'll let you take it away from here. Number 12, what's the easiest game this season for Duke?
Yeah, so I believe it to be the only game on the schedule that is if you want to chalk it up as a win preseason. I believe there's only one game that we see on this schedule that is a for sure definite win, and that is week 2 Lafayette home game. Now, I will say that I know we'll make it maybe a couple comments after each one of these. I will say, I say it's a guaranteed win. It does come 5 days on the heel of the Clemson home game, opening night, Labor Day. And so that's a very quick turnaround. It doesn't matter if Duke plays terribly in that Clemson game. It doesn't matter if it's a close game and Duke loses, or if Duke somehow pulls off that upset. At the end of the day, that team has got to turn around. The coaching staff has got to turn around and get this team ready to play in just 5 days. And so that is going to be a challenge. I would maybe expect potentially for there to maybe be some first quarter struggles and whatnot in this Lafayette game. But at the end of the day, Duke is going to be heavily favored, barring just a catastrophe. This should be a pretty significant, easy win for Duke.
No doubt about it. It's got to be the easiest game on the schedule. A lot of people probably weren't even realizing that Lafayette College had a football program, and yet they do. And so with that being said, with it being the second game of the year, I look at this schedule, Josh, and I look at this as like the first opportunity to maybe see some freshmen or guys further down the depth charts that get the opportunity to get out and get significant snaps, because Duke should have this game well within hand.
Yeah, it would be nice. And like I said, I don't see another game on the schedule that we know is going to be like this. And so, this might be a game where you see several or a few Henry Beelan, snaps at quarterback. You may see some of the freshmen. The freshmen have up to 4 games that they can participate in without burning their red shirt. And so you could see that as well. And so I think those are some things for Duke fans to keep their eyes open for in this game for sure.
That's the number 12 game that we're talking about. So the easiest on the schedule. What about number 11?
Number 11, I've got at UConn, and I was toying back and forth between this game and then the number 10 game, but I believe at UConn will be the second easiest. And this is not to take anything or discredit anything that UConn has done. In fact, UConn had an incredible season last year, went to a bowl game. In fact, I believe 9 out of the 12 opponents on this year's schedule went to bowl games last year. Jim Mora is doing a great job up there. Jim Mora of the old playoffs fame. Doing a great job up there at UConn. Being on the road is always a challenge. This will be Duke's first road game of the season, and so there's the logistical issues there. There's just getting used to the travel that's there. But, for a lot of teams, it actually helps them focus a little bit more. And so I feel like while UConn had a good season, I feel like Duke had a better season. I feel like Duke is better, period. 17 returning starters. We've all heard the drill. And so I believe that Duke goes basketball school up to basketball school and gets the win.
Yeah, only 2 meetings all time between these two teams, and they signed a home-and-home deal for this year and next season. So in 2024, UConn makes the return trip to Durham. However, the Huskies have won both meetings so far in the history. They won in 2004, and then they also won in Durham in 2007. But as you noted, UConn has been a pretty bad program in college football the last few seasons outside of 2022 when they go 6-6, go to the Myrtle Beach Bowl, ultimately lose, so finish with a 6-7 record. But nonetheless, things look a bit more optimistic and bright for that UConn program. First road game for Duke, as you mentioned. So, let's slot this in at number 11. What about number 10?
All right, number 10, we're going to stay out of conference. And based upon what's gone down over the last 6 to 8 weeks in Evanston, Illinois, we're going with Northwestern. I believe this Northwestern game will be the third easiest game on the schedule. Now, certainly, I could definitely be wrong on this. These kids who lost their head coach and all the turmoil going on in that entire athletic department there at Northwestern, it could bring these guys together. They could play above their heads. But my personal opinion is they may do that the first week, and it might bleed into week 2. But I believe by week 3, which is what we're talking about here, that you're going to see kind of the reality set in. They lost several players to the transfer portal as soon as they learned of the firing of Coach Fitzgerald. And so at the end of the day, I believe a struggling Northwestern program is our third easiest game of the season. It's a home game for Duke this year, and I see us getting that win.
Yeah, the 3 easiest games on the schedule for Duke are within the first 4 weeks of the season. So it is a grind to play college football. And of course, that first game of the season is against Clemson at home. We will see where that game ultimately falls in our rankings a little bit later. One more before our first time out here on the show today. So working backwards, 12-1. That was number 10. So number 9 is what?
Number 9, we're getting into ACC play, our first ACC opponent. What I believe is the easiest ACC opponent. It doesn't happen until the end of the season, the second to the last week of the season, and that is when Duke goes to Charlottesville and plays the Virginia Cavaliers. Now, this is obviously being based largely upon the lack of success that Virginia had this past season under first-year head coach Tony Elliott. Certainly, Coach Elliott could turn that program around, and by the time we're speaking of this game in November, it could be completely different. But from where we're sitting right now, from what we're looking at, that ship is going to take a little bit longer to turn around than he probably wants it to turn around. New quarterback this season as well, and so I just feel like they're going to struggle. I don't feel like they have those vaunted Bronco Mendenhall type UVA talent and teams. And so at the end of the day, I believe this to be the easiest ACC opponent. In fact, we were able to vote with the ACC media this year, and I believe we voted UVA to bring up the seller there of the ACC this year.
Yeah, they're at the rear. I think a lot of people are in agreement with what to expect out of Virginia going into the season. All right, let's talk about the next 4 games, kind of the middle section as we're ranking games based on difficulty for Duke football in 2023, and we'll continue that conversation after our first break here today. Locked On Blue Devils is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. It is America's #1 sports book, 25 days away from kickoff in college football, which means what? It means that the NFL is almost here as well. Tonight, we've got preseason games. Tomorrow, we've got a lot of preseason football games. Our Carolina Panthers taking on Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. Bryce Young starting a new era of Carolina Panther football. And you can get the best football props on FanDuel all season long. You get to bet on a Super Bowl winner right now today at FanDuel, and you get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. It's that great of a deal that FanDuel has right now for the football. So pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. Go ahead and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start owning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. We move forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. I ask you, sir, let's talk about our friends over at FanDuel. One bet on a Super Bowl team right now here today, Josh, on August 10th. What do you think?
One bet, I'm going to go probably against the grain here, and I'm going to say the Buffalo Bills. I will take. It's Josh Allen's turn.
Okay.
It's Josh Allen's turn.
If I'm getting one pick, I'm going to, go for the repeat. I like Kansas City.
I mean, that's obviously.
It's an easy pick, but I think that's where I'm settled. So
yeah.
NFC much more wide open.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you at all on that Kansas City pick.
Okay, so let's get back to football here for Duke. Talking about the schedule, we're going in reverse order. So we've done 12, 11, 10, and 9. That means number 8, ranking the Duke football games. What is the 8th game on the schedule?
All right, so these next 4 games, there's going to be some similarities and some opponents that Duke would be maybe familiar with. Starting with number 8, I have Wake Forest coming in at number 8. Now, certainly, Dave Clawson has had some incredible seasons there in Winston-Salem. They did lose Sam Hartman last year. We just found out this past week, it looks like Donovan Green, wide standout, all ACC wide receiver, is going to miss some time. I don't know how much time he's going to miss. But I do believe losing a guy like Sam Hartman is going to be difficult. I have this as our 8th most difficult game. Mitch Griffiths is their new quarterback. We don't know what Wake Forest is going to get out of him. And so just for those reasons, losing a quarterback like Hartman, losing receivers and those types of things, I've got them as number 8. And I believe Duke will be favored to win and beat Wake Forest for a second time in a row, which would be great, especially with the Mike Elko, Dave Clawson relationships and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's bragging rights in any friendship. So anytime you can kind of claim those is something that I think all the coaches would absolutely love. So with that being said, let's keep moving forward. That was number 8. That was Wake Forest. Number 7 is the Louisville game. Why do you have the Cardinals slotted here, Josh?
Yeah, we have at Louisville, first of all. It is a road game. And anytime you go on the road in the ACC, there's going to be some difficulty there for sure. A couple of other reasons why I have this listed as a little bit more difficult game. Duke is coming off the road game at Florida State the previous week, which only the Lord knows what that could turn up. And then you also have Louisville has the bye week the previous week, the week before Duke comes to town. Louisville does have that extra week to prepare. And we know this, Duke benefits from that bye week every single season. Some of the guys maybe that are nicked up a little bit get to heal up during that week off. Players get a little bit of a mental, emotional and mental breather. Coaches get out of town and do some recruiting typically during that bye week. And so There's just the teams seem to come back after a bye week and be a little more rejuvenated. Maybe they added some wrinkles in their offense, that they haven't added yet this season because they had a little bit of extra time. So I just believe that all points to this Louisville matchup being a little bit of a dangerous one for Duke, and I have it at number 7.
Okay, how about number 6?
The old foe, the old Coastal Division foe, Pat Narduzzi and the Pitt Panthers. Who I have our 6th most difficult game. This is the final game of the season for Duke. It will be a home game this year, but it's a home game on Thanksgiving weekend. And I believe if you've been around Wallace Wade Stadium and been to games much throughout your lifetime, you know that Thanksgiving week is a very difficult game to get anyone in the stands. The students are on vacation, things like that. It's very difficult. It is senior day. And so it is sentimental in that sense. And so, but I believe, Pat Narduzzi always hard-nosed on the defense. He's always got a good offensive line. They always seem to have a running back that can just pound it down your throat. So I believe it's going to be a difficult game. I toyed with this, and I almost put it in the 5th spot, but I put it at number 6, the home game, Pittsburgh, Thanksgiving weekend.
So who ended up at number 5?
Oh, it's a great question. It is our newly
annual
renewed
opponent.
Yeah, the new annual opponent from Raleigh, the NC State Wolfpack. And once again, I have them here. There is a chance that the Brennan Armstrong experiment does not work. There's a chance that even him being reunited with his old offensive coordinator from Virginia doesn't turn into him being successful. NC State's going to struggle, I believe, in the skill positions, especially at wide receiver. They've lost a lot of talent at wide receiver. But on the other hand, a lot of people are saying Brennan Armstrong is going to get back into his form from 2 years ago. If that happens, they're going to be dangerous. We know Dave Doran's a solid coach. We know he recruits and develops his players very well. And so I believe that will be a tough game for Duke. It's going to be part of that home stretch that Duke has kind of in the early to middle part of the season. It's going to be after a bye week for Duke, which I guess does help Duke some after the Notre Dame game. But at the end of the day, I believe it's going to be a difficult game. That Wallace Wade Stadium is going to have a lot of red in the stands that game. And so it's one of those new rivalry games that's going to be very interesting to see.
The most difficult games on the schedule for Duke are up next. We're down to the last 4 games left to unveil. Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast is my guest here today on the show. Locked On Blue Devils is brought to you by our friends over at Birddogs. I absolutely love this product. You need to make Birddogs a part of your life because they make you look good. Their stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better when you're talking about the Birddog product. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of that stiff, restricting cotton, as Birddogs was able to fix this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or enter promo code LockedOnCollege at checkout for a free white tech hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or promo code LockedOnCollege for a free white tech hat. You don't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We can promise you that. As we move forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside my pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. All right, here we are, the last 4 games on the schedule. We have already, again, the schedule scrolling across the bottom of the screen if you're watching us here on YouTube. We've already talked about Lafayette, UConn, Northwestern, Virginia, Wake Forest, Louisville, Pittsburgh, NC State. What is the next game? The number 4 game when we're ranking the difficulty.
All right, the number 4 most difficult game on the Duke football schedule this season, I believe, is the short trip down 15501 to Chapel Hill, as Duke will face its bitter rival, the UNC Tar Heels, with Heisman candidate Drake May, with all the animosity that goes between these schools, the recruiting battles, the smack talk among the fans, however you want to look at it. It's an away game. It's in Chapel Hill. it's going to be difficult. This is a November game where, by this time of the season, there's maybe been some injuries on either side of the football. And so we're in the depth chart a little bit. I believe this could be very difficult for Duke. Now, obviously, last season, if you look at last season's game, it goes down to the wire. There was a couple of just bang bang plays in the fourth quarter where Duke the ball didn't bounce Duke's way, and they would have won that game. But at the end of the day, Drake May is going to have this offense rolling again. Going to have some new weapons maybe that will provide some some balance there at wide receiver. Last year they're a little top heavy with Josh Downs, and who's I think is going to be an incredible pro. But they're gonna run the ball, do their best to run the ball well, and then Drake May is going to be able to throw the ball all over the field. JJ, I believe you were muted through all of that.
That's tough. Let me try that again. Thanks for the heads up there. What about number 3, Josh? We've got Notre Dame. September 30th is that game.
Yep. Notre Dame home game. This is the 5th game in September. Technically, it's the last day of September. And out of those 5 games, 4 of those games are home games. And so this would include Notre Dame. And so we know that Wallace Wade Stadium is going to be packed out. We know that it's going to be one of those games Duke has had some success against Notre Dame. If you think back just a few years ago, I think Duke went 4-8 during one of Coach Cutcliffe's seasons, and one of those 4 wins was at Notre Dame. And so Duke's had some success with Notre Dame. Notre Dame does bring in Sam Hartman. We aforementioned him when we spoke of Wake Forest. And so Sam Hartman is now transferred, will be the starting quarterback there for Notre Dame. I believe it's going to be a very difficult game for Duke. If Notre Dame will let him, Sam Hartman can throw the ball down the field quite a bit. That's something that Notre Dame has not been able to do in the last couple of years. Marcus Freeman, the second-year head coach, looks like he wants to put in a little bit more of an offense that can get down the field. And so Sam Hartman can help them do that. And so I believe it's going to make it very difficult. And then, Notre Dame is always very physical on the lines. They got a great offensive line. They usually have a great tight end and then a great defense. And so that's going to be a very, very difficult game. Once again, you're going to see a lot of fans in the stands that are Notre Dame fans. And so it's going to be one of those fun home environments. But I believe it's the 3rd most difficult game on Duke's schedule.
I'm excited to see a game like this on the schedule for the Blue Devils and an opponent at that quarterback position. It's hard to single out just one player when you talk about opponents, but knowing that you've got history with Sam Hartman and now he's just wearing a different helmet, a different uniform, and he's going to be quarterbacking Notre Dame there. So 2 games left. People can kind of be marking off these games left on their schedule, and they know that we haven't gotten to Clemson. We haven't gotten to Florida State. Florida State, Clemson, or Clemson, Florida State? Who comes in at number 2, Josh?
Yeah, so I believe, pretty much that 3 through 12, I mean, there may have been a couple of, flip-flops that people would have done, but I believe, generally speaking, those games kind of speak for themselves. I believe these top 2 games are both going to be very difficult, but I actually have the home game to open the season, Labor Day night, Monday night, the Clemson home game as the 2nd most difficult game, which would leave the Florida State game as the number 1, and I'll get to that one in just a second. But Clemson coming to Durham. Number 1, we know what Dabo Swinney has done with that program. There's no question. You've heard Coach Mike Elko speak about it, his respect for Dabo and what they've done, how they've carried the ACC kind of on that national stage, and multiple college football playoff appearances, multiple national championships, multiple NFL players and draft every year. Seems like they just riddle the 1st and 2nd round of that draft. And so taking nothing away from Clemson, they are the class of the ACC over the last 10 years. Taking nothing away from them, but why do I have them at number 2 instead of number 1? And it's really simple. It's the first game of the season. That plays into this. Fall camp is great, but fall camp is not like having 3 or 4 games under your belt. And so coming into the first game of the season, I believe gives Duke an advantage with 17 returning starters, Riley Leonard coming back, all those types of things. Also, Cade Klubnik, while he did start the last game or two of the season for Clemson last year, he's a new starter. At the end of the day, it was DJU throughout the entire season, and then they finally went to Klubnik at the end. But he will be a new starter for them this year. And paired with that is the hiring of a new offensive coordinator. And certainly, and his name escapes me right now, but certainly the TCU offense was one of the best offenses in the country. I'm not questioning the hire in any way at all. But I do believe first game, new quarterback, new offensive coordinator, new scheme. If there is a game that Clemson could struggle in this season, it's going to be this first game. And so that's why I have this game as my number 2 game. Just shooting straight with you, JJ, if this game was week 6, it's probably the most difficult game.
Right.
I've got it at number 2 because of where it's placed on the schedule and all of those factors that I mentioned.
Yeah, the worries that you would have about Duke to start the season are the same for Clemson, again, because it's everybody's first game of the season. So I think that's a great point. So Florida State is number 1. As we've reached the conclusion of the show today here, Josh, give us a brief rundown of why you've got the Seminoles as the toughest game.
Yeah, Florida State. Well, I mean, Mike Norvell has the Seminoles back. I mean, they have not only recruited well. You think Jordan Travis is in Heisman talk, ACC Player of the Year talk. It's typically either him or Drake May, depending on who you talk to, especially as far as quarterbacks are concerned. And so you got a great quarterback. You got a great running back. Just a really good run game returning. And then I believe Norvell has really done well in the transfer portal. They've played that game very well. He's loaded up on experienced talent. It seems to have completely changed that culture. We all know as ACC football folks what Florida State used to be. And then we saw the kind of downturn over the last few years, and I believe Mike Norvell's got that program back to where they need to be. It is an away game. You're going down to Doak Campbell Stadium in Tallahassee, so that's going to be it's homecoming for Florida State that weekend.
What an awesome environment it's going to be.
Yeah, in fact, myself and Scott from our podcast are making that trip. We will be there in person for that one. But that's going to be, I believe, the most difficult game for Duke. And you think about it as well. I mean, Duke is into the season a little bit, and I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but the risk at that point, is there a key player on either side of the ball on either team that's maybe banged up, are the teams into their depth chart a little bit? And if that be the case, obviously that's going to hurt Duke a little bit more than that's going to hurt Florida State at that point. So I've got that as the most difficult game on the Duke schedule at Florida State, October 21st.
I can't wait for the football season. Here we are, just 25 days away from the start of the year, and really excited for that Florida State game because it is going to be such a big test for Duke football. Josh, really do appreciate you coming by the program as you do so frequently. Football season is here, which means the weekly visits are once again going to pick back up for you and I here on the podcast today. Give me one quick plug for your podcast and, again, how people can leave reviews and help us out.
For sure. Section 17 podcast, Duke Football Talk is who we are. We begin weekly podcasts starting August the 22nd with our season preview. August 29th is our Clemson preview, and then every week throughout the season, we will recap the previous game, preview the next game, give our thoughts, maybe even sprinkle in some interviews with the opposing teams, play-by-play folks to give you some insight on our opponents. But we do that every week. We also upload different articles and items to DukeFootballTalk.com, but you can find us on all social media platforms at Duke FB Talk. And just like Locked On, we always love a good rating and review. And so if you get a chance, do that for both Locked On and for us. That would be greatly appreciated.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. We'll do this again next week, okay?
All right, JJ, have a great one, man. We'll see you.
That's my pal Josh Cox, again, joining us here on the program today. And that's going to do it for another episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Really do appreciate your support and what you do for us each and every day here by being an everydayer, by consuming this product and this show every day, part of your schedule. That'll do it. We'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.